In a shocking near-death experience, a man named John had his life forever changed when he passed away for several minutes, only to return with an urgent message. During his brief time in the afterlife, he was shown a series of startling visions that revealed 4 major events coming in 2025. These events were not only unsettling, but carried profound implications for humanity's future. John saw a world that would be rocked by catastrophic events, and he was given a divine message to warn others. This is the story of what he witnessed, how it changed his perspective on life, and why it's important for everyone to understand the gravity of these coming events. John's near-death experience began unexpectedly, as he found himself in a life-threatening situation following a sudden medical emergency. He recalls the feeling of everything going black as his body failed him and he slipped into unconsciousness. He could no longer feel the weight of his body or the pain that had overtaken him. Instead, he felt a profound sense of peace, an overwhelming calmness that seemed to transcend the confines of time and space. In that moment, John felt as though he was no longer part of this world, yet he was not alone. It was then that John encountered a presence that radiated love and understanding, Jesus. This encounter was not one of fear, but rather one of deep comfort. Jesus spoke to John with a gentle authority, telling him that he had been chosen to witness future events. John felt an intense connection, as if Jesus were showing him something vitally important that needed to be shared with the world. It was during this experience that John was shown a series of visions, 4 catastrophic events that would unfold in 2025. As the first vision unfolded before John, he saw a dramatic collapse of the global financial system. It wasn't just a minor recession, but a full-scale financial meltdown that affected countries across the world. He saw stock markets crashing, banks failing, and nations spiraling into economic turmoil. People around the globe were left in panic as their savings vanished, and governments struggled to cope with the widespread crisis. John could feel the desperation and fear of the people as they tried to hold on to what little they had left. It was a time of great uncertainty, as nations could not agree on how to fix the problems, leading to further instability. The world economy was on the brink, and every decision seemed to make things worse. John felt the weight of the world's suffering and understood that the financial collapse was more than just numbers on a screen. It was a reflection of deep-rooted issues within human society. The greed, corruption, and mismanagement of resources had led to this point, and it was clear that the world would have to rebuild from the ground up. What was most troubling to John was the realization that this financial disaster could have been avoided if humanity had learned to value compassion, cooperation, and ethical practices over profit and power. In this vision, Jesus emphasized that the root cause of the crisis was humanity's disregard for the well-being of others and the planet. The world was now facing the consequences of these choices. The second event revealed to John was a massive natural disaster, a cataclysmic event that would strike a major continent in 2025. As he watched the vision, he saw enormous earthquakes, followed by deadly tsunamis ravaging the land. The natural world seemed to turn against humanity in an overwhelming and destructive way. The devastation was immense, with entire cities submerged underwater and millions of people losing their lives in the chaos. This event was not just a simple earthquake or tsunami. It was part of a larger pattern of catastrophic climate events that would worsen in the coming years. John saw that the Earth, burdened by decades of human negligence, was responding in kind. The planet had been pushed to its limits, and now the forces of nature were taking their toll. The destruction was so widespread that entire ecosystems were wiped out, and communities were left to pick up the pieces of their shattered lives. In this moment, John felt a deep sense of regret. He saw how humanity's disregard for nature had led to the planet's suffering. The message from Jesus was clear. If humanity did not change its ways, this would be only the beginning of a series of disasters that would continue to worsen over time. However, there was hope. Jesus spoke about the possibility of healing if only people would come together to take action on behalf of the planet. The future was not entirely set, and humanity still had a chance to make a difference. The third event that John witnessed was the rise of global conflict, one that escalated to an all-out war. Tensions between major powers reached a breaking point, and nations found themselves locked in an intense and devastating conflict. John saw widespread violence and destruction, as leaders who had failed to address underlying issues resorted to war. The consequences were catastrophic, with millions of lives lost and entire cities reduced to rubble. John was shown that this war was a culmination of years of political corruption, greed, and ideological division. Instead of finding common ground, world leaders had become consumed by power and control, further dividing the world. Jesus showed John that the war was not inevitable. It was a result of humanity's inability to see beyond its own interests and work toward global unity and peace. If humanity continued on this path, the conflict would spread, engulfing more nations and causing unimaginable destruction. The message was clear. Peace could only be achieved if people set aside their differences and worked toward mutual understanding. Jesus warned John that if the world did not learn to cooperate, the devastation would continue. But there was hope. John saw moments of humanity coming together during the conflict, where people chose love over hate, compassion over vengeance. These moments of unity were small but powerful, showing that even in the darkest times, there could be light. The final event that John witnessed was a global health crisis, unlike anything humanity had ever seen. It wasn't a single virus, but rather a series of interconnected health crises that overwhelmed the world's medical systems. Hospitals were overrun, medical professionals were exhausted, and governments struggled to provide aid. As John observed the chaos, he saw that the healthcare system was ill-prepared for the scale of the crisis. The loss of life was staggering, and the global community was left to grapple with the fallout of a health system on the verge of collapse. What troubled John the most was how preventable this situation had been. The lack of global cooperation in health matters, the underfunding of healthcare systems, and the continued exploitation of resources had all contributed to this collapse. Jesus spoke to John about the importance of caring for one another, particularly the most vulnerable members of society. The health crisis was not just a medical issue. It was a reflection of a society that had failed to value life in all its forms. John realized that the world had to change its approach to health and wellness, focusing not just on treating diseases, but on promoting prevention, cooperation, and care for the most marginalized. Humanity needed to put aside its self-interest and work together to create a system that truly prioritized the well-being of all. The health crisis of 2025 could be avoided, but only if people learned to care for one another in a way that transcended borders and divisions. As the visions continued, John was shown that the key to preventing these catastrophic events was unity and collective action. Jesus spoke of the power of humanity coming together, working as one to address the challenges of the future. John saw a vision of a world where nations and individuals put aside their differences and worked together to tackle the global crises that loomed ahead. Unity, Jesus explained, was not just about political cooperation, but about spiritual and moral alignment. People would need to come together in love and compassion, not out of fear, but out of a genuine desire to protect and heal the world. John saw that the future was not set in stone. It was malleable, and humanity had the power to change it through collective action. But the clock was ticking. People needed to wake up and start making changes today. John understood that the choices people made in the present would determine the world of tomorrow. He realized that there was still hope, but it required a shift in consciousness, a recognition that the world was interconnected and that the suffering of one affected all. John returned to the physical world with a profound sense of responsibility. The visions he had witnessed were not just for his own benefit. They were a call to action for everyone. Jesus had shown him that humanity had a choice. It could continue down the path of destruction, or it could choose to act with love, unity, and compassion. The events of 2025 were not inevitable. They were a result of the choices humanity made today. John felt compelled to share the message of hope and change. He knew that the world had the power to avoid these disasters, but only if people woke up and started working together. It wasn't too late to change the course of history. The time to act was now. As John's experience came to a close, he was left with a sense of peace. Despite the terrifying visions, he understood that humanity still had the power to change the future. The events of 2025 were not set in stone, but could be averted through collective action, compassion, and faith. The message John received was simple but powerful. If humanity chooses to work together, it can overcome the greatest challenges it faces. The future is not determined by fate. It is shaped by the choices people make today. With love, unity, and collective action, the events of 2025 can be averted. As we look ahead, we must remember that we have the power to shape our destiny. By choosing to act with compassion, care, and understanding, we can create a future that is full of hope and promise, not fear and destruction. It's up to us to make that choice. If you found this message insightful, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel to stay updated with more profound stories and messages. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Together, we can inspire positive change.